All right, this is a recap of where we left off this week, the last part of a tutorial in which we exported our 3D tutorial box as an OBJ, opened it in Photoshop, converted it to U3D, and then tested it in an Acrobat file. So we're going to take this a step at a time. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and I'm going to choose Edge. I'm going to bevel the edges of this so it's a little bit more believable as folded cardboard. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and right click and I'm going to choose Bevel Edge. I'll go to the menu and I'm going to set the width for 0.06 and the segments for 2. And I'll click Apply. And that's pretty much what I want, so I'll close out the menu. I'll right click and choose Object Mode. I'll select my geometry, hold down the space bar. I'm going to go to Mesh, Combine. And you'll see that all the geometry has now got a green border. I'm going to click on Delete by Type History, and then I'm going to center the pivot. Now the reason I merged these things together because it'll make it easier to manipulate in Photoshop. So now that I've got the model pretty much created for the virtual part of this project, I'm now going to go to File and I'm going to choose Export Selection. And down at the bottom for the file type I'm going to choose OBJ. Okay. So I'll give it a name and I'll save it to my source images folder. And I'll click on the export button. And next we're going to go into Photoshop and we're going to prepare this to be embedded as a virtual file in Acrobat. All right, we're in Photoshop now. We're going to open up that .obj we just generated in Maya. So I'll go to File, Open, and I'll click on that OBJ file. And the resolution by default is set to come up at 300 dpi. I don't want it to be that large, so I'll drop it down to 150. It's got to be in an emailable PDF. And when you first open it, you'll notice that your texture map is not visible. So we need to go to a couple of windows here to reintroduce that texture that was on our Arnold shader when we were working in Maya. In my 3D window, now to get these windows I went to Window, 3D, and then I also access the Properties window as well. Okay, so we want those two windows up. First I'll go to the 3D window and I'm going to click on Standard Surface. Now it might say cube, it might say sphere. It depends on how you shift selected these when you merged them in Maya, but either one will give us the same result. So I went to the cube 2 and I clicked on the AI Standard Surface. That's our texture in Maya. In Photoshop, the color node where we introduce textures is called the diffuse node in Photoshop. So I'm going to go to the diffuse node and you can see that when I click on that in my properties window, if I have this icon on the left hand side here selected, the node inside of Photoshop appears. So I'm going to click on the little page icon and I'm going to choose Replace Texture, and I'll go out to my source images and I'll select my JPEG or my PSD, and now I've got my model inside of Photoshop. Now there's nothing else to be done in Photoshop. There's nothing to do with the lighting. There's nothing to do with rendering resolution. There's one other thing that's integral to having this 3D virtual file appear in Acrobat vertically as we'd like it to be. So once again, I'm going to be using my properties and my 3D window as well. All right, so I'm going to click on the cube or sphere, whatever the geometry is represented by, right above the AI Standard Surface. In the Properties window, I'm going to click on the middle icon, that little cube with the lines. And in here I see these coordinates to set the orientation of the box. I'm simply going to click on the one down here in the middle, right above Reset Coordinates. And then I'm going to go over to my file and I'm going to go to 3D at the top of the user interface. I'm going to choose Export 3D Layer. Under 3D file format, I'm going to change it from Collada DAE, and I'm going to choose U3D. This is the format that Acrobat understands and will allow us to import into Acrobat. Now everything else is left the way we want it to be, just by default. I'll click OK, and I'm going to put this into my source images, and I'll hit Save. And next, we're going to go into Acrobat and introduce this as a virtual file. Now, in Acrobat, we're just making a dummy to test the virtual quality and orientation of that box. So I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to create a new PDF, and I'm going to choose Blank Page and click on Create. Now, I'm kind of zoomed in on this, so I'll hit Command 0. And once again, I'm going to click on Tools. And at the far right-hand side of that top row, you'll see the term Rich Media. I'll click on Rich Media. When I do that, a menu with the Rich Media icons appears at the top of our page here. I'm going to click on Add 3D, the little cube. I'll click and draw just a random box. When I let go, the Insert Content window comes up. I'll click on Choose, and now I'm going to go to my folder, my source image folder, and there's my U3D. I'll click on Open and click OK. And there's my box, and it's vertical. Now I want to get rid of the gray background, so I'll right-click, choose Properties, and you'll see that right in the middle of this menu, about halfway down, you'll see Transparent Background. I'm going to click on that, click OK. Now if I click back on the file, and then I go up to Options, Trust this document, I can now click on it, and I can rotate this with my left mouse. I can zoom with the right mouse. Now this is as far as we have to go with our tutorial. You'll notice that there are tools on a default bar here which allow me to manipulate that box in different fashions, and I can also change the lighting effects if I wanted to up here. Alright, so that concludes the virtual part of the tutorial.